So my idea when it comes to rubato is a combination of hopefully some sort of structure of a certain way of feeling the music and making sense out of a certain harmony, but at the same time allowing myself to embody the space that I'm in.
Welcome to another episode of the Whole Note Podcast. Today's guest is Timothy Chooi. You may remember Timmy from episode 15 when he came on as our very first in-person guest. I recently caught up with Timmy in Philadelphia days after his recital at the Juilliard School as part of the Starling Delay Violin Symposium. We talked about the build-up to that particular recital as well as a strategy for programming recitals in general. He also gave us an inside scoop as to how he goes about getting ready for a performance on concert day. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy. All right, Timmy.
All right.
Thanks so much for making time for us here today.
Of course.
Yeah, you have the unique distinction of being our first ever returning guest. We first met and did our podcast together last year around this time, and so I'm really excited to be back here in Philadelphia with you and to talk more about your incredible life and music.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to talk to you again. It's already been a year, so here we are, 2025.
Exactly. Yeah, so I want to start us off by talking about a recital you gave recently at the Juilliard School. You opened the Delay Starling Symposium that happens every summer around this time at Juilliard, and you gave an incredibly inspiring performance and conviction, a performance that was filled with conviction. And I just want to talk a little bit about that recital and the lead up to it, because I understand you were actually in Tokyo right before. So can you just talk about the strategy behind how you went about the programming and just the overall preparation and lead up to that concert?
So yeah, as you mentioned, I was just at the Starling Delay program that happens every 2 years at the Juilliard School, a really incredible program that is meant for violinists to nerd out. I don't really know of any other program where it's just purely just about violin. The program that I performed was the same program that I played in Japan, and I was on tour over the last 2.5 weeks across the country. A lot of it was in Tokyo. We went to Nagoya as well, and the program itself included Vitaly's Chaconne, the Franck Sonata, Prokofiev's Second Violin Sonata, and Zigeunerweisen, along with some encores as well. So it's a very traditional program. It's music that really speaks to my heart because I played it since I was very young and a little kid, but at the same time, I never had the opportunity to put all 4 of these pieces together. And for me, that was what I really wanted to share when I was in Japan, because it was my debut big recital tour, and it was a lot of questioning, like, what do I want to program? And when the opportunity came to perform it at the Juilliard School, which is my alma mater, I wanted to be efficient, first of all, because I was performing the night before getting into New York, and Tokyo to New York there is a direct flight, but it's still 13 to 14 hours, and with the jet lag and all of that, and having to change pianists. And I'm so grateful to have Ginny Park, which was an incredible collaborator, and we performed many times before. There are some controllables and uncontrollables that I have to take into factor when I'm going with such big distances that have a lot of uncontrollable situations to be in. My flight was delayed. Jet lag is very interesting because you never really know how your body's going to react. And surprisingly, my body reacted quite well on the way back this time, but sometimes it could take 4 days, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 1 day. I do think there was an element of adrenaline that probably forced my body into adjusting to the time zone very quickly. Is that healthy? I don't know. But it was that's kind of the little gist of how the program came to be at the Juilliard School.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because when I saw you play, I mean, I knew from your Instagram that you were just coming back from Tokyo, but if I hadn't seen your stories or anything like that, I wouldn't have known otherwise, because you seem so refreshed and just so enthusiastic and just energetic. So that's incredible.
It was also like 100 degrees.
Yeah, it was really hot.
It was crazy. I've never seen New York that hot before.
No, I was like melting, honestly.
Yeah.
It was
like a sauna outside.
Yeah, but I mean, that didn't stop the people from coming in.
No, we had to turn away some people, actually, I heard.
Yeah. It was a good crowd. And I want to talk a little bit more about the program specifically because, and I mentioned to you before this, but all the pieces you played were very much mainstays of the violin repertoire, right? With the Chaconne, the Franck Sonata, Prokofiev, obviously, Zagoranis, and what I really took away from that recital was, even though I had heard all those pieces many times and played by wonderful artists, there was a unique perspective that you gave that I really appreciated, where it felt like I was almost hearing these pieces for the first time.
Oh.
And I just want to talk a little bit about your relationship with all of these pieces, and just how, because you had mentioned before that you had lived with these pieces for a while now, and how your perspective and your ideas with these different pieces, how they have evolved as you've grown.
Oh, it's a loaded question. Thank you. Well, the thing is that, I didn't really think about this until maybe even today. Because there's not really a theme to the program other than just great music that was somehow related to the violin. Very violinistic in that way.
Yeah.
So you think about the first piece that I started with, which was the Chaconne by Vitali. And even though it was originally a very early piece in the Baroque era, it was transformed over the centuries, and the last rendition, at least the one I played, was arranged by Olivier Charlier.
Okay.
Fantastic violinist, and really romanticized it for the violin. So even though it was a very early tune, it was in this kind of neo-Baroque style of performance.
Sure.
The second piece was the Sonata No. 2 by Prokofiev, which was originally written for the flute, but then David Oistrakh heard in the audience and asked Prokofiev if he could write it for the violin.
I didn't know.
So with that combination, it's like there's already a violinistic almost conversion to it, and then the intermission. And then Franck, of course, was written for Isai's Wedding, one of our biggest pedagogue and just composer violinist in the history of violin playing. And then Zigeunerweisen by Sarasate himself, one of the most incredible showmen. So now that I think about the four, it is like a violin's heaven, and what more fitting than to play it at the Violin Symposium. Each one of these pieces are so nostalgic to me. The very first piece, the Chaconne by Vitali, I heard it when I was a kid. I remember recording of Sarah Chang in her kind of a mashup, Sweet and Sorrow, recording on EMI Classics, and it was the first piece on the program. And man, that just stuck to my brain. I think I was about 10 years old, and I heard that piece for the first time, and we had this incredible new speaker system, and it was so touching. It like literally shook the entire floor because of, the recording was fantastic, the piece was fantastic, the player was amazing, but really it was just kind of the context of everything. So for that first piece, I played it in many situations before. I played it in my graduation recital at the Curtis Institute of Music. I performed it at my debut recital here in Philadelphia in 2016, and so forth. And I haven't really picked it up since. So it's about 10 years from now. And for me, that piece is just an opportunity to really share my love of what the violin sounds like. I mean, it's not the most terribly interesting piece, to be honest. It kind of goes around the same G minor chord, and it goes occasionally to like G major, and goes into maybe like D major and D minor on on a whim. But there's just something so epic about the piece, and what it does, it has this fantastic form and almost pop-like bass to it, and it's just great violin playing. And I think every violinist just dreams of just digging into that piece. So that's my connection with that piece. The second piece, the Sonata No. 2 in D major, David Oistrakh is a huge inspiration of mine, looking at some of his recordings. And also, this piece by Prokofiev is very interesting because a lot of his pieces, I think, are very full of sarcasm. But this piece in particular is on the lighter side, I would say, compared to his first sonata, which for me, I'm still trying to understand to this day. It's a lot of very dark idioms to it. But this one for me is a very light and sarcastic and playful and relatively complex, but easy to put together with the pianist. And I feel that, when having an entire recital program, you need to have one main idea. And for me, that's the next piece, which is the Franck Sonata. So that for me is the heart of the piece. In the traditional context of, I think, recital for the last 40, 50, 60, 75 years, it's usually like you start with a classical sonata, and then you go into romantic, and you finish with some showpieces. But I kind of twisted it up, so I started with a neo-Baroque piece, which was the Chaconne by Vitali, and then a neoclassical piece by Prokofiev. So the same idea, a little bit more modernized because of the expansion of our centuries now. And then the Franck Sonata for me just doesn't need to be touched. It's just, it speaks for itself. For me, this is a piece that I learned also when I was a student here at the Curtis Institute of Music, and also again at the Juilliard School. And I think it's just so violinistic. It's incredible that Franck wrote this epic sonata for an incredible piano part first of all, but also a violinistic part that is just so natural and organic. And then Zigeunerweisen for me, it's actually that piece for me is actually not one that I would be like I want to play it. I could never play it when I was 11 or 12 years old. I think I played it once or twice. It was an epic fail. But I remember hearing this piece so often, and I love it. It's there's something just like it's almost like you're playing a game, a video game. Like I have 3 lives, but I have 1 life now. And I could nail every single one of these passages, and you never know what's going to come out of your instrument every time I perform it. So for me, it's almost like a little bit of a challenge. And I think a lot of violinists, especially at the symposium, they're just like, okay, he missed that harmonic. Oh, I missed that too, like maybe in my 2nd rendition or my 15th rendition of it. So for me, that is very, very fun to do. And then for the encore, I did Tambourine Chinois by Chrysler. Chrysler, also another big figure. I love that piece.
Yeah. Well, and that's really interesting because I think talking more about like the program, going back to just how you ended up, the lead up to that recital, I'm sure whenever you were asked to come give this recital, that you were very strategic with the program because coming from a 13-hour flight, you didn't want to program anything that was going to maybe be a little bit overwhelming given your current situation. So I'm guessing a lot of like you mentioned before, the pieces you picked, you did so knowing that like you were gonna be maybe a little jet lagged or something.
Yeah, for sure. It took me a while to come up with this program because I always love pushing the boundaries of repertoire. But that also takes a certain mindset. And I was trying to think about the context of where I was performing this recital in and where I was coming from. And it's a hierarchy of importance because, is the hierarchy artistic excellence? Is it stamina? Is it a great concert? And you have to factor all of them together because I don't think one is more important than the other. But with what you have to work with, you kind of have to think about where to put your marbles. And for me, that was making sure that I give a great recital. I feel absolutely comfortable with the way I'm going to perform, even at 80%. And to also know and trust that we're going to have this together in 24 hours. So for me, with these 4 pieces, I knew that no matter what the circumstance, let's say, all hell breaks loose and my flight gets canceled and I come in an hour before, because I was looking at the calendar on my United app and I'm like, okay, there's a flight 4 times a day from Tokyo to New York. So in case I don't make my 5 o'clock, there's another 5:45 next morning at 10 a.m. and I still get in. I knew that there was a sense of predictability. And this is something that I think not many people talk about, especially to a lot of recitalists. But I don't expect that to be talked about because, you try not to put yourself in that situation. But I've had a lot of experience now with understanding how programming does play a role in not only making your life much more artistically fulfilling, but also sustainability. Because that is also part of what makes us artists, is like we are continuing to grow and challenge ourselves, but also understanding what are the challenges out there. So is it the programming? Is it the lifestyle? Is it the style? I mean, the style of the performance as well, the situation, the venue. So understanding which program to perform in which venues, I think is important. And also, how much do you stretch yourself?
And this actually is a good, nice segue for something I want to touch deeper on, which is actually the art of programming. I had spoken on a podcast with Will Hagen about this extensively, and I'm really curious to get your take on this because I think everyone has maybe a slightly different perspective on how to go about programming, but I think it is definitely an art form in itself to be able to program the right balanced recital. And I mean, for you violinists, you guys have such an extensive
We're lucky.
Just loads of sonatas, loads of short pieces, virtuosic pieces. So for you specifically, on any given season, how do you go about coming up with a program that you both feel artistically fulfilled, like you mentioned, but also feel like you're giving back to the audience?
Yeah, it's challenging. Oftentimes when we book recitals, we have to think about a program a year to 2 years in advance. And I would love to change that because I'm not saying we can decide on the spot, but you know, our bodies change, our mind changes, our spirit changes as well. And I think that I love, like for now, I got very inspired today to program. I was thinking, I was reflecting about the recital programs that I just performed. And I was like, okay, I can understand this is a really good program. What would I change? I'm playing recital in November in Vancouver, near my hometown.
Sure.
And I was thinking, okay, it's going to be a shorter recital, 60 minutes.
Okay.
And they wanted Rebelle Cigan. So, but they wanted Franck as well. So I'm like, okay, now we have this kind of rhapsodic idea of something a little bit more bohemian, like, you know, Hungarian with the Cigan, but it's a French composer still with that language. And then Franck, even though it's very Germanic in a lot of its harmonic structure, it's a still Belgian French sounding piece. So I'm just like, what can we put? Like Vitaly Chacon would work, but it's too thick, right? We need something a bit lighter. And so I was just searching a whole bunch of pieces. I'm not going to give it away, so you could look at my recital program.
Right.
But I was just thinking, and then I was listening to a recording of one of my favorite artists, and I was like, hey, actually, that sounds fun, right? It also has to be something you're willing to put the time into. And I think that's very important because when we're students and we're young artists, you are sometimes forced to learn whatever they give you. And I think that is absolutely necessary because you need to know what you like and what you don't like, and also to challenge yourself. Because how do you not like something when you haven't tried it, especially in the context of music making? But when it comes to coming with a lot of responsibility to go on stage and when people are buying tickets and expecting a really fantastic show, it's a balance. So I find that whatever really drives you as an artist to invest the time and to go through the challenges, and at least there has to be something out of the entire program that you are willing to go through the motions with and to be, you know, willing to risk it, then I think that's going to make a great program. Whether that's all 10 Beethoven sonatas or a recital full of all show pieces, there has to be some sort of greater mission with the entire recital program. And I think, of course, it's you know, what's been done in the past should definitely also be taken into factors. So this traditional sense of starting with the Mozart sonata, and then going to Beethoven, and then romantic and showpiece, that's also a fantastic syntax of recital programming. Old school, but there's nothing wrong with old school as well. So I think whatever it is, there has to be a framework to it.
Yeah, speaking of that, the old school way, I'm sure you probably saw, it was one of the earlier Violin Channel videos.
Okay.
This was obviously with Maestro Aaron Rozan.
Oh, yeah.
Did you work with him much at Curtis?
I never worked with them directly, but I watched a lot of his lessons.
Yeah. Well, and he like said in this early Violin Channel video where he was talking about violin programming, and he was just saying how he was so frustrated with how the kids today, back then, were like programming just a bunch of sonatas, and he thought it was very like dull almost, and that there needed to be nuance. But I mean that I think that kind of goes to the old school perspective of recital program, excuse me, that you were kind of mentioning. But yeah, that was just so funny. Yeah.
I mean, you got to change it up.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that some of these kids are wanting to just put a whole bunch of sonatas in. Great. But then also you have other people that says, I'll just put one sonata and the rest will be showpieces. And I think that diversity is fantastic because not only are you watching the person or the artist perform on stage, but you're also understanding the arc of the entire storytelling. And in order to enjoy something, you have to not like something.
Yeah, moving forward a little bit, still kind of sticking to the recital because it's been stuck in my head for the last several days. One thing I really noticed was your sense of rubato, and with every piece actually, and I'm a huge fan of rubato if it's done tastefully, obviously. And it brought me to think about this quote. I want to say it was an anecdote regarding involving Schumann, maybe, or Mendelssohn. Someone can fact check me, but someone had asked Schumann, let's say, about rubato and how we should go about it, and I think he pointed outside and said, "You see how the leaves, blow with the wind. It's not always so even, or and basically alluding to the idea that rubato needs to be like nature." And so I'm curious as to how you go about your sense of timing overall with your when you go about working on a piece, because along with your rubato, I just also really appreciate just the different colors that you get with that come with the rubatos that you so elegantly execute. So I just talk us through that whole process a little bit.
It's a really good question. I'm not sure if I can answer all of that
Sure.
in one go. My sense of rubato, which I hope it's not too crazy, I think it's a lot of a reflection of how I feel the music. And of course, when I perform recital repertoire and even concertos, I think it takes a lot of confidence and vulnerability to actually execute it. And I think a lot of the times it doesn't work. And that's okay. And I think that's actually what makes playing instruments so unique and making music so, at least classical music, very, very, very intriguing because you can't really replicate one rubato to another performance. And everybody feels it differently as well. So my idea when it comes to rubato is a combination of hopefully some sort of structure of a certain way of feeling the music and making sense out of a certain harmony, but at the same time allowing myself to embody the space that I'm in. So if I mean, there's some pretty hard rules. So if you're in a dry space, generally you can't play with the room as much. So what does that mean to me? Generally, things can't be too slow. Okay. When you're in a very big space with lots of resonance, so I'm thinking about even Carnegie or a church or something, you automatically need to take more time. Things travel a lot more energetically in a space like that. So with those hard facts, you have a kind of a tool set. And now you're like, okay, how do I put vibrato, right? Certain vibrato takes more time. So in the context of Paul Hall at the Juilliard School, it's a very nice hall. I like it. It's kind of right in the sweet spot of just being resonant enough, but not to the point where it's soupy, right? So I knew coming into that hall that I could actually be quite free with, and I'm not just free, but very direct with how I wanted to take my rubato. And there's always been things I wanted to take and push and pull in, for example, the Franck Sonata or in the Chaconne by Vitali. And I knew that whatever I felt on the inside was going to be somewhat transparent in that hall. It's not going to be overly distorted. So with that in my brain, I had to be somewhat strategic with, okay, if I really want to take time in this harmony, I'll take time. Am I going to overindulge? Unless I really want to overindulge, I will keep it conservative, or I'll go for it, right? And also, what piece is it in? In Zigeunerweisen, I think it's pretty limitless, right? In something like Prokofiev, I think for me, Prokofiev is very robotic, not in a way of metronome, but I think there's a sense of, it's neoclassical, I think there's a sense of reservation to it. So also, I mean, this kind of goes in a circle, but where does each piece and each work fit in the program? So if I were to play Prokofiev by itself, I think I might have approached it very differently. But within the context of the Vitali and the Franck and the Zigeunerweisen, that is probably the most linear in terms of tempo and rubato piece out there. Okay, Zigeunerweisen for me is probably on the very, very far end where you can basically do whatever you want. The Vitali, I wanted there to be a lot of rubato, but I also knew this is the beginning of the recital, so there needs to be some sort of structure within the piece. And the Franck was in between, I would say. A lot of liberties, because I do feel the piece very strongly myself, but at the same time, I have to understand, I'm working with a very, very important collaborator that is equal, if not somewhat actually bigger than my part, that I have to be sensitive with the way, how does it work on her end as a collaborator as well. So that part can be very difficult, but we've played this program together before, so I kind of knew where the threshold was. So there was one part actually in the Franck Sonata where I actually wanted to take some time, but Ginny has always said, like, I think you should go forwards. And I don't necessarily agree, nothing wrong with that, but I know, this part makes more sense for her to lead than for me. So, no shame, Ginny. But this, for example, is one part where you have to pick your battles. And I think that's why the art of recital is very, 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 it's not one that comes early to me.
Yeah.
It did not speak to me when I first started out my performing career. I actually kind of did not like playing recitals. I didn't get it because first of all, it was exhausting. Stamina-wise,
Yeah.
you play for 90 minutes, even
Right.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
And then technically, I think it's exhausting
Yeah.
because you're changing a whole bunch of styles of performance, and you're very naked as well.
Yeah.
And also, you have to play with the pianist, and there's just a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
Whereas with an orchestra, it's very clear: conductor, orchestra.
Right.
You have to sandwich yourself into it. In some ways, it's a little bit more transactional.
Yeah.
And with those hard rules, then comes a lot of creativity as well.
Yeah.
So it's just a very different structure.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to really enjoy the art of recital playing, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. And that's really, it's interesting what you mentioned about how you have to kind of go with the hall because, so I'm guessing then you really are very intentional with your sound checks in the hall, the various halls that you play in.
Absolutely.
And so then that kind of leads you to make decisions for that specific hall then. So I guess then basically any given city you're in, you're going to be playing it slightly different than.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think we're very sensitive to that as acoustical instrumentalists. Yeah, I think because we don't have a mic, we don't have something that, ejects our sound, we have to play with the hall. Yeah. So also programming-wise, it can be a hit or miss. So for example, playing a whole Bach recital, you kind of pray that you're playing in a. It's better to be slightly too echoey than it is to be dry, because that's the death of your Bach at that point. I mean, it's definitely doable, but it won't have the same effect.
Yeah. Well, just quickly, speaking of Bach, have you given an all Bach recital?
I've never given an all Bach, all 6 partitas and sonatas. I do plan on giving an all solo recital, solo violin recital in the future soon, and that's already making my hands sweat, to be honest. But it's a challenge, and this is another thing. Like with repertoire, it's not necessarily always what you feel comfortable with, what you want to perform. But for me, like playing a solo recital, which will include some Bach, is it's like making my stomach, grumble already. But at the same time, it's a challenge I'm willing to take.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like going back to what you were saying about feeling naked, like you don't feel more naked than playing Bach in front of people.
I mean, pianists do it all the time.
Yeah.
So.
But one last thing, kind of pertaining to the recital, and actually this kind of happened after the recital, but I was waiting in line as you were greeting all your loving, adoring fans. But there was one adorable moment that I remember as I was waiting where you were talking with a mom and her, let's say like 12-year-old son or something, and the mom asked the child to ask like one question that he had prepared, and he asked you how many hours you had practiced at his age, and I believe you said something like 4 hours a day, which is incredibly like I at that age was not able to practice for that long. But this kind of leads me to a question I wanted to ask about how your perspective and just your overall structure of practicing has evolved since your earlier days in life to where it is now, which obviously you probably don't have the time to practice as much as you would like.
Absolutely.
So just going about just how you manage practicing and how that's evolved over the years.
Practicing that's just a great podcast subject for the future as well. With that kid, I'm very careful with the way that I share, especially now as someone who does involve some sort of pedagogy into my brand or just life in general. Because I've come to realize that being a violinist and being a musician and all of this artist stuff there's like different chapters of your life, and I think it's very hard to see it when you're in the thick of it. But looking back, it's very clear chapters. So when I was 12 years old, I was in a very, I think, exciting moment of actually developing my technique. And I wouldn't say that I had a lot of help in that way. I didn't have like a teacher that was like, this is the way to develop your technique. But I remember at that time was the first time when I was kind of awakening myself and being so intrigued by looking at other violinists' technique and being so fascinated and being so detailed oriented, somewhat borderline obsessive, which I think is absolutely necessary in order to really perfect and understand how your technique works. So when I was that age, I think I wouldn't say I was practicing nonstop for 4 hours,
Right.
but there was a sense of dedication that averaged around 3 to 4 hours a day. A combination of course, myself really wanting to spend time in the room, but also, having help with, parents.
Yeah.
who
And even
put
your
me in
brother
the
as
room.
inspiration, I'm sure.
Exactly. And there was a thirst of interest to really understand how the instrument worked from a violinistic standpoint. I also had really fantastic mentors that, not necessarily teachers, but they were coming into my city and I was going out there to learn from, and that exposure. I've always been a very curious person. I love to know how things work. So for me to understand how did the thumb play a role in making a passage much easier, how does your shoulder play a role? Where do you put your where's your bicep flex, or does it not flex, right? And just understanding even, how your chin affects the way that it creates a sound. For me, all of these things is just so cool. And I often tell kids because, when they're 12, I think it's necessary. If you really want to be at a high level, you need to put in at least 3 hours at that age in order to develop your technique. Because the way I see a lot of my students now, there are really 3 points in your life when you really can develop your violin technique playing. And you don't want to be doing this at a late stage. I mean, you will always continue to refine, but for me, it's like when you first start the instrument. And that is such a big role. I'm a horrible person to set someone up to play the violin. And that is not a job that I think I could do justice to. So I have huge respect to anyone that is setting up people to play the violin, because that is a lot of responsibility. The next time I think your technique can develop is between that 12 and 15-year-old range. That's also when your body is starting to change. And you need to understand and be very aware of how your body is adjusting to the instrument on a daily basis, because you literally grow and change on a daily basis at that age. And then again, I would say around 18 to 21. That's when your body starts to finalize, right? It's still growing, but it's becoming your ultimate form at that time. And it's probably the last wave when you can really do anything drastic of changing your technique, whether that means vibrato, holding your instrument, taking off the shoulder rest, you name it, the way you stand, the way you produce your sound, your bow hold and all of this, that is really the last time. And that's why a lot of the times it takes hours to understand, to be with your instrument, to develop your craft and your skills with your craft. So now, I mean, I'm 31, and so are you. So I love practicing, but I also got to do other things with my life, right? I'm dedicated to my art, but I also, part of me loves being an artist on top of being a violinist. And it was very hard for me to understand this synergy between the two, but I think that my technique has developed to a certain point that I can trust it. But artistry is the part that needs to grow now. And that, art is a reflection of, I think, the world, life, emotions. And I truly think that you cannot really produce those unless you kind of live somehow or relate to it somehow. And it doesn't mean you have to go through, like you don't have to go through a divorce in order to feel divorce, but I think you need to feel some sort of that pain, or at least observe that pain from someone. And the only way you can do that is to be a social human being. And when you practice for 8 hours a day, that's the complete opposite. So it's very difficult. So I'm very careful with the way I share this kind of advice with kids, because it's very, very much for me a very individual thing. If you're 12 years old, go practice. If you're 26 years old, practice, but also go out and, have some soda.
And I think the overall just what you were talking about in terms of just having a life outside of the instrument is so crucial, especially because all of the great musicians that we admire, going back to Bach, I would say, they were influenced by their environment and their surroundings, and that's what their music was rooted from. So for us, like as musicians, of course, yes, like you said, we have to put in the hours, but at the same time, at a certain point in your life, I think it's important to be able to kind of put your instrument down and just really, like you said, experience life, enjoy life, and bring the fruits that gives and bring it back to your music. And that's really where I think art happens. I guess. So,
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that all goes too. I think within the last couple of years when I could really start to see that, and it's a combination of just being out of school, teaching a whole studio, and going around the world, which I know is such a privilege that I have, and understanding that art, as cheesy as it sounds, really does connect the world together. It's a language that is not necessarily spoken, but it is a language that people can understand because of the emotions and how you inject into the instrument as well. So many times, if I play a piece that I don't really have much an emotion with, or at least some sort of direction and narration with, it's just like speaking a different language, like they don't understand it, right? So it's like the audience will be like, I have no idea what it means. It's better to be disagreeable than it is to be neutral, I think. But who knows, maybe in 10 years or 5 years or next year, I'll be like, hey, it's better to be neutral.
Next year, we'll catch up. Exactly.
Yeah, we'll catch up.
Yeah, and just speaking a little bit more, just from a logistics standpoint of how you go about practicing now, because obviously you're very busy with all your concert engagements on top of, like you said, your full studio that you have at the University of Ottawa. And I'm sure every day is a little bit differently, but talk a little bit with us about how you manage your practice schedule, I guess, regimen.
It's multifaceted for sure. I have wonderful students, first of all, and they are very understanding of my dedication to performance, because I think it does hopefully transfer to them as well.
Of course.
So I'm always thinking holistically. I do think that part of an artist's life is to be very organized, and I do think that is a skill that needs to be developed, and I definitely had to learn that the hard way. It pays $1 million to just take an extra effort to be organized, because something will always come up that will disorganize your life. And there's a lot of controllables that you can have in art, in music, in teaching, in performing, and practicing. And that comes from understanding kind of where you have your values. And that opens up a whole different can of worms. And values comes from programming to what is our negotiables and what are non-negotiables, to valuing your own mental health and also your physical body as well, and honoring that. So it took me a while to understand that for sure, but I think what influenced and kind of sped that up was just seeing my students, honestly. Seeing, sometimes you come into a lesson and they're playing a Bach fugue, and I'm seeing them like, they haven't bathed, or they haven't, just even brushed their teeth or something. I'm just like, you know what, we gotta sit down. I know Bach is great, and you have great taste in that, but you gotta brush your teeth, because if that starts falling apart, then what is Bach to you? Like you cannot performing the instrument, playing the instrument is usually the last leg of what's going on in your life as well. So I really doubt that you can be at a very good artistic space when your entire life is kind of disorganized. I think maybe it can add to a certain flavor of the way you perform a piece, but it's I think art is it's a real reflection of who you are. So how do I handle it? Understanding my energy level. I teach really well in the morning, very early in the morning, and it's because it's full of clarity in my brain. And when I practice, it's best done at night.
That makes sense.
So understanding my energy levels, first of all. Afternoons for me, I don't know if it's kind of a genetic thing or something. I need to take a nap at some point. I need a siesta. And for me, I try to have that as being my let's enjoy a little bit, especially during the thick of the year, of the season and the school year as well. Practicing, it's hard. Practicing is very hard because it's like going to the gym. You have to force yourself. It's never easy to do it. There are moments and there are places in your life when you're full of motivation to do it, but you can't count on motivation. It's a lot of discipline. And there's only a certain point that you can depend on finger memory to do it. But once that starts going on by itself as a snowball, things start to just, it saves you and you use it very sparingly, but you also want to avoid being in that moment too much, that autopilot situation. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but I've seen myself kind of using that a little bit too much, and it's kind of always be on emergency mode. Yeah. So practicing time for me is very sacred.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be much.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an hour.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 2 hours. On a great day, it can be 3 hours. But it's better for me to practice an hour every single day than it is to do 5 hours one day and then not again the next day.
Yeah. And I think this really speaks to students out there, hopefully, because I think when you're in school, because you have all that time, you kind of, in the back of your head, just kind of think, oh, I can be on autopilot for 4 hours while I practice, and my muscle memory will kind of hold up. And maybe it does because you're young, but I think as, like you mentioned, we're both the same age, and as we've kind of developed in life, we realize the importance of intentional practice, really just being mindful of everything we do, every shift, every vibrato, every note that we play, like what are we doing and what is the purpose behind how we're playing that note, because like you said, it's just like it's better to just spend an hour a day as opposed to just 5 hours and maybe not really be so focused or intent with what you're doing. So that's really
I think so. Yeah, this whole thing with the short attention span is definitely hyper accentuated now with the age of technology, but quite honestly, I don't think it's ever not been there. I think we've all kind of always had this space cadet, very easy to be distracted. So training your mind and making it very laser focused is, I think, what really makes people stand apart from the regular people.
Yeah.
I mean, not regular people. I don't mean it in a demeaning way, but if you really want to have excellence in the way that you're understanding your craft, you need to train your mind to be so focused. And it's not easy. And I'm not saying that you're born or not born with it. You can train it. Yeah.
Well, and just speaking more specifically to like your practice routine, what does your warm-up routine look like in terms of like how do you start your day of practice?
Yeah. It's changed a lot. In the past, it used to be a lot of scales. I still do scales, but that's the one area where it keeps changing. When I first started out, it was absolutely half an hour of scales, non-negotiable, but sometimes it's 5 minutes now, sometimes it's an hour. So I like to start with some sort of scale. Sometimes if I'm really crunched for time, I'll just do one set of just D major, D minor, and harmonic minor, and that's it. Slow, fast, whatever, just something. Because I do think that's a nice precursor just to get that familiarity. I like to do a lot of physical exercises, so I do take off my shoulder rest sometimes, and I just play without it, because I think it's nice to understand how the violin is working your body without that arbitrary artifact. I do use a shoulder rest, but I do also like understanding the instrument without it as well. And then it's very difficult, but go into the piece that makes you most nervous about. Yeah. So a lot of what I do right now is my practice is very goal oriented. So it's like I have a concert in 3 months with this repertoire. I must get working on that. So I don't have the luxury, as I would love to, where I can just practice and learn a piece for the sake of learning and practicing it. Maybe one day if I take a sabbatical or something. But as of right now, it's very goal oriented. So it's not. There's no time to lose. Yeah. So if I have, let's say, Dvorak Concerto coming in November. I can kind of gauge how long it's going to take to bring up to a level that I want it to be.
Sure.
So I know like 4 months before I've played it before, but I need to start now.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because I mean I'm sure you've covered so much of the violin repertoire with the concertos and recital rep, but I'm sure there's always going to be a time where you're asked to play a concerto that you either haven't played before or maybe you're not as familiar with. So like, let's say, for example, like if someone were to ask you to play like, I don't know, like some modern concerto and you'd never heard it or played it before, obviously, like how would that work? Like if, let's say like your management, if they gave you like a year, would that be enough? And
Ah,
how would that work for
yeah.
you?
I mean, I love that situation. It doesn't happen so much,
Sure.
but right now, if you were to ask me, like, if the date makes sense
Mhm.
and it's a great conductor, great collaborator, I'm game for it.
Mhm.
Um, it I do take calculated risks.
Mhm.
So if it's right now is it June? Yeah, it's June.
Yeah.
So if it's happening next June,
Mhm.
I mean, if it's something that it's an orchestra that I really want to work
You're
with, it's a
right.
conductor I want to play with,
Right.
and it's a concerto that or a piece that I'm willing to take the risk, I'll do it. I'll make it happen,
Mhm.
right? What I will avoid is having too many of those happening at one time, right? So understanding my energy level and how much I want to have a life as well
Yeah.
before is very important because you can only do so much.
Right.
Yeah, and also um, I think art needs to breathe as well. Music needs to breathe, and
Yeah.
you can't ever cram something.
Mm. Except for the Queen Elizabeth competition, when in the finals you had to
But
learn
I
one.
did, but actually, weirdly enough, it felt like enough time. Yeah, 7 days.
Uh-huh.
A lot of things can happen in 7 days, right? I mean, you have to be realistic with what you're producing as well. You're not gonna. I mean, I know some people memorize the modern work, but from the get-go, I knew like it's not necessary.
Right.
It's not going to do me any justice. I'm not going to use that. I mean, if I knew I had to memorize something, going before that, I mean, I would second guess like, do I want to do this competition?
Yeah.
But you kind of. I think what's really important is seeing what you can control and what you cannot control. So for me, when I got that piece, I was like, I mean, I asked so many of my mentors, how do you learn a piece in 7 days? All of them were like, that's enough time. That's enough time. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, I mean, it could be, but I mean, it's not going to be maybe your prime interpretation of it, but you can have a very good interpretation, and you try your best. And part of what's beautiful, I think, and I remember my teacher Catherine Cho told me at the time, it's like the work that you put in is the result of how the performance will be as well, and it'll be a living and breathing performance of it. And um, every day, I remember I just kind of looked through it and there's moments where I was just like, I don't know how to play that. That's like not playable. But you find solutions, and I started right away.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I want to quickly talk to you about that whole experience. I think
Okay.
we talked about it a
Yeah.
little bit last year, but just with the final round, for those that may not know, I mean, they literally like isolate you from the rest of the world
Yeah.
at the Queen Elizabeth
Right.
Chapelle, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The Flaggy, or no, not the flag.
No, at the Chappelle.
Or the Chapelle, excuse
Yeah,
me, yeah. And they bring like 2 finalists in every day, and
Yeah.
then they take away your phone, is that right? And
They
then,
did, yeah. Which I can imagine now is actually more of a freak out than it was in 2019. Because 2019 was like, yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't as integrated into our lives as it is in 2025.
Yeah, definitely. But like, just what was every day like? I mean, I'm sure it was obviously a lot
loved
of
it.
practicing. But
I loved it.
Really?
I told my brother just recently, I was like, we should have another Queen Elizabeth finals week. I loved it. I mean, maybe I'm just that kind of guy. I don't like being on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm on my phone, I mean, I'm very adaptable. Like, I will adjust to it. But this stimulation of social media and emails and all of that, and just being connected with people, it gets a lot sometimes. And I loved it.
Yeah.
I think I look back at that moment. I was like, wow, I was like in a really good spot. I could enjoy every day. Every day felt long, but purposeful as well.
Yeah.
And just being, it's not exactly, we weren't in nature, but it was in the somewhat countryside, a suburb maybe.
Yeah,
It felt like a suburb.
yeah.
You could just like, you appreciate the small things. Like I was like, oh, I can actually eat dinner and taste spices.
Yeah.
And you can go outside and smell the air, and you can kind of like, oh, today's a nice sunny day, rather than just being like, I gotta get somewhere.
Right.
So I really liked it, and I think that was also why I think it felt like such a monumental performance for each one of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So like, did you kind of plan out what your day was gonna be
Yes.
like going into it? Like, so you wake up. Well, how
I would
did it start?
I would schedule the night before.
Okay.
Yeah. I also like to this day, I look at why I was in such a good headspace during that time under so much stress.
Right.
And I try to replicate some of that. So I came up with my own habits, and because you were kind of in, it's a bad word to say it, prison, you kind of work with what you had. So I tried out new things. I read a book in 7 days.
Okay.
I also wrote down my schedule the night before and tried my best to stay disciplined in following it, but also if something came up, I could take the calculated risk of being like, yeah, tonight I'm going to talk with this person for an hour and let's just do it, right? And there was a lot of boundaries, and I think when you have a lot of boundaries, there's a lot of freedom and creativity that you can create with those hard rules.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes to this day, I'm like, so that's why COVID was so hard, because there was no, I mean, I don't know about everybody here, but for me, there was nothing, right? So with nothing, it actually felt more stressful, at least in my eyes. There were no rules in terms of how you plan your day. There was no pillar, there's no structure, there was no goal, there was no responsibility, and that was hard, but no.
So by the time all the finalists were together, like, were you guys just able to hang out a little bit at least? And how was that? What was that like?
Everybody had a different persona.
Yeah.
You were asking about how were the competitors, right? Everybody was different. I think some people were absolutely driven crazy, and for me, I was just loving it. I could stay another 2 weeks if you wanted me. I could stay a whole year. But I do think I'm a very adaptable person also. So not necessarily to my values, but I think I see what is absolutely what I can control and what is non-controllable or uncontrollable.
Yeah. That's. I mean, I think also, like, as musicians, we need to always be able to adapt.
Yes,
as
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really fascinating. So talk to us about your upcoming year. So are there certain, without giving maybe too much away, are there certain programs that you're very much looking forward to more than others, or like just projects that you have coming up?
Got a lot of really great projects coming up this year. I'm super excited about this. What I love about the coming year is that every single concert I'm doing, there is a genuine artistic and reason for it, right? So, I mean, it's a lot of Tchaikovsky's, let's put it out there first of all, but it's with a conductor I've always wanted to work with. It's an orchestra that I've always wanted to play with. So let's start in 2 weeks. I'll be in Amsterdam. And I'm playing at the Concertgebouw with the Essen Philharmonic from Germany. So we're doing the summer festival, so we're going to go into Amsterdam. It's Bruch's Violin Concerto, which for me is a very, very meaningful piece. I love that piece, and I feel like I've really developed an interpretation with that. I've worked with many conductors and many, many, many orchestras on that work, and yeah, it's just looking forward to that in a concert hall that is so legendary. And then I go to Hawaii. I'm going to Honolulu. I'm going to play Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, and that is going to be at an outdoor shell. And that's going to probably bring about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. And I'm super excited just to play such a piece that I think a lot of audiences will be continually to be fascinated by, but also such a staple in my repertoire. And then, what am I doing after that? One of the big tours for next year is with the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra. And we're doing a tour across many cities that I played before in Europe, including Munich, in Paris. Actually, Paris is my first time playing solo there. And Innsbruck in Austria, and this Tchaikovsky in Bruck, and with an orchestra that I'm really looking forward to. And then in Vienna as well with the Four Seasons, also with an orchestra that I've grown to have a very close relationship with artistically. So those are kind of the big pillars of next season, and then I will go back to Japan as well to play there, which I'm coming more often to East Asia now, which I really like.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Thank you.
I don't know if I asked you this last time, but do you have like a favorite violin concerto that you will never get sick and tired of playing? Or
a lot of them. I think all of them.
Yeah.
I never get sick and tired of. It's pieces that propels me to do what I'm doing. Sometimes it's nice to change it up, absolutely, because things get stale. Not the piece itself, but you need time to refresh it.
Of course.
No, I think all of them. I love all of them.
Yeah.
All the major ones. I mean, I'm sure there's new ones to be told. There are some where I don't feel like I'm ready to play. So for me, that's the Brahms Violin Concerto. I mean, I've learned it. I don't really have much to say for that piece yet. I don't know why. I do look forward to the day. I do feel like it's starting to change a little bit now. There is a bit of this thirst to look at the music and to listen to it again. But for the longest time, I could play the notes, but I felt nothing out of it. There was just no reason for me to program it other than the fact that someone asked me to do it. And I didn't feel that I wanted to do that with that piece. Very different than the Brahms double concerto, which you and I could play one day.
Yeah.
But I love that piece. I feel like there's so much to do with that piece, which is so funny because they're both from the same composer.
Right.
But there's something about the double concerto which just really speaks to me. In some ways, it's much more direct
Yeah.
in terms of how the piece flows than the violin concerto.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious then, well, because I guess you kind of answered it already. Then do you feel like you have a healthier relationship right now with, let's say, his violin sonatas then? Or is
Not all of them.
Okay.
Not all of them. I think maybe I'll encounter that a little bit deeper. I mean, I haven't been that heartbroken, so maybe that's what's missing with Brahms and I, right? Never longed for someone like that. There's just something about his music. I do find it pleasant, heartbreaking, and soulful and rhapsodic, and you name it. But I just cannot relate to it. I don't know why. I love it. I mean, the double concerto. I don't know why. There's something else to that mix, which maybe is the harmony and the interaction with another colleague or something that it does speak better to me. But I don't think I'm getting the fullest experience out of that yet either. He was not a violinist by any means, so. That doesn't help with the actual playing of it.
Yeah,
it's very awkward.
Well, and so this brings up something that I want to ask. Then, so you've played the double concerto.
Yes.
Okay.
Quite a few times.
Yeah, and how does that work? Because I mean, obviously, with every cellist, you have to. There's a lot of flexibility that has to be had. Is the first step just going about and agreeing on bowings and then going from there, or how do you go about that process of putting that together in a short period of time?
Yeah, that's a good one. I've played it with many different partners,
Right.
so different cellists, and each one of them have been very unique in the way that they approach the instrument. But I think that is also what I like about it. So I think we should agree on the artistic vision, but not necessarily the bowings and a few articulations, a few kind of endings you want to. If someone ends up and you don't want to end up down.
Right.
But I think the rest, I think that's part of the beauty of it is these two individual voices playing together harmonically or against each other sometimes. So I think as long as the intention is there, it's pretty much it's up for grabs.
And obviously, same goes for like the Beethoven triple, which is
that one I don't enjoy playing. I'll be honest with you right here. I've played it.
Okay.
And I will play it again.
Sure.
It's just something I love hearing it.
Yeah.
I love when other people play it. But I really don't like playing it. It's not one that fits in my fingers very well.
Okay.
I'm trying to force it into it, but and I've learned from many of my mentors and teachers and a lot of my colleagues. It's just like it's a finicky one.
Yeah. Would you say the same about the violin concerto, the Beethoven violin?
Yeah. Yeah, my experience with that concerto, I played a lot actually. Looking back, even though it feels very raw still.
Another piece that makes you feel very naked, right, as a performer?
Yeah, the last time I played it, it was mixed. It's one of those pieces where you practice and it's like, okay, it's not bad. I can do something with it. And you get on stage, and it's like you're twirling your fingers sometimes. But then you start second guessing, like, wait, is it my right thumb that goes first or my left thumb? And then you're like, how much distance between my fingernail? You just start to second guess yourself all the time. And the thing about that concerto for me is it always is underwhelming. I'm sure it's very powerful on the stage, but as a performer, we're just like, was that good or was that bad? I can't tell. And I think that in some ways is not a great feeling. So. But I've heard that also from many of my colleagues. It's not. I mean, the notes are not so hard, but they become so hard on stage. I don't know why. I'm like, what? How many flats are there in a C major scales? And even though there's nothing, you're like, oops, E flat.
Yeah. Which is so like that. When I see people like even to this day at international competitions when they choose to play the Beethoven in the final round, I'm just like, wow, that's very brave.
They've got lots of steel. They got nerves of steel.
Yeah. And I've always said to people in the past, like violinists, I think you guys have the most rich concerto repertoire. But then I would also say that cellists, we're very fortunate to have a very rich sonata repertoire.
Yes, you guys have great sonata repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you guys have like the Franck, and I told people this after your recital, but as a cellist, I'll never play the franc on the cello, just because it was so perfectly written for the violin. Honestly,
Maybe you're a violinist.
yeah, I don't like,
on the inside.
yeah, I mean, I think I grew up wanting to be a violinist,
I see.
honestly. But I mean, in all seriousness, I've heard cellists play it, and it's fine, it's beautifully played, but
Right,
it just doesn't really have the same charm as it does on the
Oh,
violin.
thank you.
Yeah. So, Timmy, this has been really beautiful, and I'm really glad that we were able to collaborate again. Before we close,
Yeah.
last time I asked you to close with a word of wisdom for the younger generation of musicians. This time, I actually want to do something different
Okay.
and ask you personally. You're still young, obviously, relatively. we're both relatively young, right?
We're going through the motions of life.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you see yourself as a person and musician in 10 years? And how do you think you want to go about the journey of achieving what you're looking for in 10 years? I know that sounds like a loaded question.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
I just hope that I still have the spirit to create. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. I look back at where I was when I was 21, 20, 22. It's hard to ever imagine that I would have this kind of experience in life at 31. And I'm not saying it's better than I expected. I'm not saying it's worse than I expected. I couldn't fathom a life of what it looks like at 31. So at 41, the only thing I hope is that I am able to still have a thirst to create something, whether that's music, whether that is an experience for myself or for other people, or teaching or collaborating of something, the spirit to just collaborate and to create.
That's wonderful. And kind of adding to that then, follow-up question, what's one thing you would tell 21-year-old Timmy in terms of how to go about things?
21-year-old me, I'm trying to even think what I was like when I was 21. Okay, well, I think I would tell 21-year-old Timmy that what you think is really important at that age is still very important. That will never change, but the hierarchy of values change a lot. And I will never understand it until you reach 31. So, yeah, I think that's also probably what 41-year-old will tell me at 31. Because I mean, I have a lot of things that I think I've stuck very close to my heart that I want to achieve, whether that's personally, professionally. Right. But the hierarchy of that has changed a lot, even over the last 5 years, I would say. How about you?
Oh, going back
what
to
would you tell 21-year-olds yourself?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, something along those lines of like maybe not everything you're going through is the most important thing in life at that moment. Like like what you were saying, the hierarchy of things. Because I mean, when you're younger, everything in front of you feels hyper important. But looking back, I mean, yeah, they were important, but there's a broader perspective to be had, I think. So
I'm trying to think of a specific example. Maybe I can think of one. I think when I was 21, I was thinking about having the perfect life, whatever that means.
Yeah, what does that look like?
What does it even look like, right? And I knew that, but I wasn't naive at 21. I knew that you had to start somewhere. But I think now when I'm 31, the perfect life is to experience things, right? So what I'm saying is that hasn't changed. I still want to have the perfect life. But what does that mean? So when I was younger, maybe that was more tangible. I'm sorry, not tangible, more concrete goals. So getting a job, being able to feed myself well, to have a somewhat of a living, and to experience some sort of comfort. And now I find I want to have a bit of discomfort. I want to maybe not reach everything all at once. So this idea of delayed gratification for me is much more valuable, because It's not so much about reaching a goal. It's more about the process of getting to that goal that is more interesting to me now. And that for me is more perfect than just getting it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the art of imperfection is what
It's more perfect. For
perfect.
me.
Yeah.
Which is very complicated to say. So
No,
like, and I think that's why it's so interesting because, like you want things to look a certain way, but then I'm like, but now it's too perfect, But who knows? Maybe that'll change next year or 5 years from now.
Well,
Yeah.
here's to hoping that you have a very perfect life.
Yeah, no, I think when I was 21, I want everything to be explainable. Like, there's a reason why things happen.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, there's a reason why things happen, but you cannot explain it.
Yeah.
No.
Explaining the unexplainable.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
Timmy, thank you so much for
Thank you.
this time. I mean, I know
course.
you're a very busy guy, and it really, I mean, this was like your limited free time, and I'm really grateful that you made time for us. So.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much. We'll do it again next year.
Let's do it again next year. Yeah, we'll do it.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Shin Young.
Yep.